Welcome back to another rousing YouTube video. Here we go. Alright, so we are in domain eukarya. Okay, so look back at the back wall. There are 3 domains. So all of these organisms that we're talking about today have a nucleus because they are eukaryotic. Specifically, we're going to talk about kingdom Protista or kingdom Protist. Sometimes we put the A, sometimes we don't. Depends on how lazy we're being. So here we go. These organisms are unicellular eukaryotes that don't fit into any other category. So unicellular means one cell, eukaryotic means has a nucleus. So these organisms are one cell big, but they do have all of the organelles that we learned about back in the cells unit. This is everything else. So how my professor kind of described this kingdom is, you know, when you're out and about and you get that really weird knick-knack. Maybe like my brother, he used to collect keychains everywhere we went, hotels, amusement parks, it didn't matter. He was getting the keychain. Well, we'd go home and my mom would look at him and say, "Tanner, great, where are you gonna put this?" And his response was always the same: it went in the junk drawer. Everyone has that one drawer in their kitchen. It's a junk drawer, and you have no idea what's in there. That's kind of what this kingdom is. It's kind of that junk drawer. Everything else that we can't fit in somewhere in another kingdom, we're going to shove it in here. Okay, so your best bet is, when in doubt, put it in here. Okay, so think back to that domain kingdom worksheet. Your answer was Protists, so we already kind of jumped ahead on that one. There are 3 main groups, and these are going to be nice and easy for you. So the first one is animal-like, the second one is plant-like, and the third one is fungus-like. So look back at that back wall. Do you see domain eukarya? How there are 4 strings coming out of it. Okay, so the first one is protist. The second one is fungus. Now look back at your screen, right here, fungus-like. All right, look back at the wall. The third one is plant. Look back at your screen. Right here it says plant-like. All right, one more time, look back at the wall. That fourth one is animal. Look back at your screen. Right here, animal-like. So when you can't remember what are the 3 types, you just need to look back at that wall and say, okay, what are the 3 other strings? Plant-like, animal-like, and fungus-like. So kind of keep up with that pattern. Hopefully that'll kind of make sense to you guys. So the first ones we're going to talk about are the animal-like protists, because these guys are really cool. They're called protozoa. Proto means first. Think of a prototype, okay? So you all know that I'm pretty obsessed with the Rubik's Cube. Well, there was most likely a prototype, the very first one ever, and it probably didn't spin right, or maybe it just didn't work, or maybe he used the same color on all 6 sides. It's the first thing. This zoa means zoo. It's kind of like animals. When you go to the zoo, you're expecting to see lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. So protozoa are the first animals. So people that believe in evolution believe that animals evolved from this creepy looking dude right here. That eventually we got to 2 cells and then 4 cells and we got bigger and we got mouths and we got butts and all that stuff. You can see here, his mouth is his butt. Thank goodness that we evolved away from that. That's gross. Okay. This guy though, because he's the first animal, he's the prototype. He didn't work out that eating and pooping out of the same hole is no good. Amoebas. So this guy's really cool. They can be as large as 2 millimeters. Look at your fingernail. The very top of it, the white part that sticks out, unless you just cut your fingernails last night, that's about 1 millimeter. So 2 millimeters, you can probably see that guy squirming around. It's probably about as thick as your lead on a piece of a normal pencil. Okay, so like a wooden pencil. They are consistently changing shapes. I'm going to kind of run this video while we are talking so you can kind of watch down there as well. You can see the little goo squirming and warming around there. So think of like a water balloon. If you would fill a balloon up with water and squeeze it real hard, all of the water would go above your hand. It would squish out, just like this video is showing you right now. It would squish out into the new pocket. Well, amoebas move in the same way. They kind of squish and gush all over the place. So let's show that one more time for those of you that were actually taking notes instead of listening to me, which is fine. Okay, if you want to watch it some more, I'll have it linked. But this one's kind of boring. The other videos are pretty cool. So they create with these squishes. It's something called a pseudopod or pseudopodia. So if we break down these words, pseudo means false. Pod or podia means foot. So think of a tripod. Those things hold up cameras. Well, a tripod has 3 feet. Okay, tri is 3, pod is foot. So there's your pod, that's easy. Pseudo is a little bit tougher, okay, but a lot of writers and singers, if you're into English or music, a lot of them go by pseudonames. Okay, Mark Twain, he was a really famous country singer. He actually, that's not his real name, it's a pseudonym or pseudo name. It's a false name. I know there's some writer that went by a false name as well. I can't remember right now, of course. Maybe it'll hit me later. Okay. These little extensions you can see down here in the picture. Here's a pseudopod, here's a pseudopod, here's a pseudopod. These help them move. It helps them attack a predator. It helps them move stuff around their inside, so they can kind of reach one of those feet inside of their body. They can invert it, and they can smush around the insides so that they can eat better, or maybe they need a little bit more water in some area. So those pseudopods help them move, helps them grab prey because they eat bacteria and stuff like that. Oh, these guys will eat your brain, so watch out. I'm going to link a video. I suggest you watch it. It's pretty cool. Okay. Moving on to the fungus-like, these guys are awesome as well. These protists are all heterotrophic. Okay, so that means they eat food. The fungus-like, just like a mushroom. We talked about that. I think it's page, well, let me think for just 2 more seconds. Page 5 in your notes, maybe? Nope, maybe 3. It's either 5 or 3. We talked about, just for 2 seconds, we talked that fungus are heterotrophic. Same thing here. Fungus-like protists are heterotrophic. They have a cell wall, and they use spores to reproduce. Okay, we're going to talk about spores a little bit more at a later time. So all of these guys are able to move around. They most likely have a flagella or some cilia, just like bacteria. Remember that a flagella is a tail, and cilia are little hairs. My favorite example in the whole wide world is a slime mold. I highly recommend you watch that video. I'm going to link it below. It's super cool. The sound is totally gross. It makes me feel like my skin's crawling. I just think it's a really cool video. Nova, stop. All right, so a little bit more on the fungus likes. Slime molds, they like to live in moist soil and on decaying plants. So a lot of times these guys will live on playgrounds, especially if it's a mulch playground rather than a rubber playground, because the mulch is dead plant and it's very moist because a lot of times it just is. It rains on playgrounds, and because there's not proper drainage, a lot of times water just kind of sits and soups up in there. So you can see in this picture, it's super duper cool. They kind of branch out. They kind of look like blood vessels. If you kind of look at your hand, on the back of your hand, or maybe on your arm, you can see how your blood vessels branch out all over the place. That's what these slime molds do. They're super duper cool. Again, highly recommend you watch that video. And last one, plant like, these are easy. This is also called algae. So if you have a pool, or if you go to a pool, or if you live near a lake, you know what algae is. Okay, algae is the green, slimy, filmy stuff that is on the top of the water sometimes. You have to kind of bleach or chlorine, or maybe you have to put a bunch of salt in the pool in order to get rid of the algae, because you don't want algae in a pool. These are all autotrophs. So just like the plants that are all around us, grass and trees, these guys are also autotrophs. So they can make their own food with sunlight. They exist in a variety of colors. There's all sorts of different color algae. There's red algae, there's brown algae, there's green algae. If I remember correctly, there's even blue algae. Okay, so there's all different colors out there, and I think that's pretty cool. We just have a little bit more to go. Their metabolism, how they're going to eat. So we're going to talk about this later, but previewing it now won't hurt anyone. So some protozoa, those are the animal-like ones, they actually have algae inside of them. So here's the situation. This gray ring is a plant-like protist. All these circle green guys, they're all algae. What happens here is the algae does photosynthesis. It makes sugar all the time. The protozoa, the gray circle, steals all of that sugar. It says, hey, if you're going to live inside of me, I'm going to charge you rent. And rent this month is sugar. Okay, so you got to pay up with sugar. In return, though, the algae is protected. Anything that comes near it to try and eat it, well, the plant, or the protozoa, this guy around the outside, he's going to keep everything nice and safe on the inside. So these guys live in what's called a mutualistic relationship. And we're going to talk about that later on this year. We're going to play with some M&Ms here in a couple weeks when we do that lab. But the algae gets protected. The protozoa gets food. They both win. It's a win-win situation. Okay. Last little part you got to know here. These guys have what's called contractile vacuoles. Remember we talked about vacuoles before. That is an organelle that just stores water. Well, a contractile vacuole keeps track of how much water is inside of these guys. So because protozoa live in water, almost all of them, they can actually explode from having too much water inside of them. So this vacuole, you can see here, it's all filled up. It's going to squirt out water, kind of like peeing. The little guy's going to pee out a bunch of water, and that's going to allow them to not explode. And obviously that's super good because you don't want to explode. Okay, so that's it. Please watch those videos. I think they're super cool, and you probably don't have anything better to do. If you do get done these notes and the videos, either go back to Google Classroom or look up on the front board to figure out what you need to do next.